Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. First, I have an announcement, which probably doesn't feel exciting or relevant to you guys since you just listened to us, but Amber and I have a very fancy new podcast setup. We have these really snuggly, fuzzy chairs that face each other, and we're talking, into the laptop like we normally do, and it just feels really cool and fancy and official. And actually, as I'm saying this, I bet we are almost exactly at 1 year from when we started the podcast.
We have to be close.
Because I think, and maybe next episode, we should do a year anniversary episode, because we dropped our first episode in the middle of September.
Oh, wow.
And we are now recording not quite to the end of August, but so we are almost at the 1 year anniversary of our podcast. Yay. And after 1 year, we have decided to upgrade. We are no longer sitting on the floor of Amber's office, and we're in our fancy new setup. So we're all cozy with coffee and tea and blankets and our little chairs. And today we're gonna, I don't want to say take it easy, but Amber and I are going to use this forum to talk about some stuff that we've just been struggling with. I feel like we could both use the space to talk out what we've been feeling and thinking about. So we are going to take you guys on a journey with us today.
Yep.
All right. So Amber, tell the people what you told me a couple minutes ago. What have you been struggling with recently?
So recently, I've been struggling with opportunities are being presented.
Okay.
Right? There are opportunities that are being presented around me, and I know that I want them, and then I just sit in inaction. And there are self-imposed barriers from me getting to point A to point B. And so I have been really trying to work through what is it that is holding me back from going after what I know I want and also what I know is mine.
Sure.
I've dealt with this story other times in my life, right? Where it's here is something and then I don't take any action to get it. I've also dealt with in my life where I've really wanted something and I have taken action and I've been rejected. And I think that story is the one that plays is at this point in your life, do you really want to put forth that much effort to only be rejected? And it's but why do I have to be rejected? And how many times have I not been rejected? And why wouldn't I just go ahead and do this, even if it's just for the journey and the experience of doing it in the first place?
I think that's so true. And when we think about putting ourselves out there and not getting rejected, that in our memory bank just feels like normal growth and evolution, right? We don't even remember the times, honestly, that we took a risk or put ourselves out there and it went according to plan. Maybe the big ones, right? Where we really reached for the stars or really reached and got it. But most of the time, we show a little vulnerability, we put ourselves out there, we're accepted, not rejected, on we press, right? And don't even think anything about it. But the 1 out of 100 times that we put ourselves out there and we get rejected, now that is seared into our memories forever.
Right.
So that's interesting because that's the story we replay, not the 99 other times that we didn't.
Right.
Okay.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about that rejection. I hold on to it as permanent. I hold on to it as a permanent mask or a permanent thing that I now have to carry with me all the time, every time I'm rejected, which doesn't make any sense because I don't hold on to the acceptance as permanent. I understand that all of that changes and grows over time, and I'm okay with that. But it's let me hold my bag of rejection here and carry it along with me everywhere I go, instead of being I was rejected, and I can look at that any kind of way I want to. I can look at it as I wasn't good enough, or I can look at it as you weren't ready yet, or that wasn't for you.
Right.
You were somehow being protected from going down that path that you thought you wanted at that time. Because as I've gotten older, obviously with more experience, you start to see further down the road. When you're looking at things, you can kind of tell, oh, this just isn't right. I understand how this works. And maybe you don't go after those things anymore because you have a little bit more life wisdom, right?
Sure.
But when you're younger, you don't have that life wisdom. So you go after things that aren't meant for you, or you go after things that wouldn't have played out well for you in the end. And, we can push really hard and take them anyway and then have to learn the lesson. Or sometimes the universe steps in and is no, I'm going to shut this door.
Like, I'm going to slam it.
Like,
because I shut it a few times and you kept, weaseling your way in there.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so true. And I think, too, one of the beautiful things that comes with age is you can look back and think, like, oh, thank God I didn't get that.
Right.
Thank God I didn't get that job. Thank God that terrible nightmare of a boyfriend broke up with me. Right? Like, thank goodness that did not go the way in that small, minute moment I wanted it to go. But I do think that story of rejection we carry with us. And I think people who are more shamey, you and I both shamey people, we wrap that rejection around us, right? Like the cloak of like, this is why I'm not good enough. This is why I'll never be good enough. Because one time 12 years ago, I applied for a job and they picked someone, who wasn't me. Because I think sometimes that rejection, depending on your core wound, rubs up against that, right? And it can feel really, really scary.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit before the podcast. But the thought that if I take an opportunity, if I make a change in my life, am I still going to be able to show up as authentically as I am right now? Or am I going to have to go back to putting on masks that I used to wear in order to fit into this new opportunity? Because if I don't think that I'm good enough and I still get the opportunity because it's meant for me, but I'm still kind of in this mindset of should I have had it, I worry that I might feel like I need to put the mask back on in order to have it. And I'm not willing to.
Because you believe, because somewhere deep down inside, you believe that you as you are not good enough for this opportunity. Right. So if by, luck and the grace of God you get it, you feel like you can't be all the way you because you wasn't good enough for it.
Right. So which makes no sense.
It makes no sense. But I think we all do this. I have a fancy meeting tomorrow that I went to J. Crew yesterday and panic bought $200 worth of shit because deep down inside, I'm like, the clothes I have aren't good enough. Why does my hair look the way that it does? And I keep telling everybody, I just need something to like boost my confidence, get me there, right? Like I just need something new. But you're right, that is our own shit. Because clearly the people that invited me to this meeting think that I should be there.
Right, and they've seen you in all the ways you've shown up in being your true self.
In my dusty ass like linen pants and my scraggly hair, they've seen me and they still invited me to the meeting.
Right.
It's just that little wiggle of inadequacy.
Right.
That you're like, oh, I'm going to have to perform.
Right.
And I get what you're saying because when you've done a bunch of work like you have done and I have done to not perform anymore.
Right.
You don't want to fucking perform anymore.
Right.
But it's hard, but you want the opportunity.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're not good enough, so it would require performing, but you don't want to perform. And
right. So you just sit in inaction because you're like, well, and it's dumb. Now that we've talked through it, I think maybe I can think about it differently. Because I do think that just recognizing that you didn't perform up until this point, right? You showed up the way that you show up. I mean, maybe there's still some performance. I mean,
every once in a while, we gotta we can't say exactly what we think or what we want to say. Right, yeah. But overall, you have been you, Amber.
Right. Right. I've been my present self up until this point, so if I receive the opportunity, nobody is expecting that I'm going to step back out of that. They're expecting that I'm either going to remain the person that was chosen.
Yes.
Or I'm going to grow even further, which is something that I absolutely want to do.
Right. Yes. So they want you for you.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to accept.
To me, that's one of those things that we talk about on here that I can say it in my head. I can be like, Jill, they want you for you. They've seen you, they know you, they want you for you. But then in my heart and my gut and my stomach and my body, I'm like, but nobody really wants you for you, right? Or they like you and just if we just tweaked these couple of little things, then they'd really want you, right? So it's hard. It's hard. I think we should talk about the inaction a little bit because I think that the kind of people that listen to podcasts like this are people who are like you and me. And people who get really good at doing the work, right? Who are good thinkers, right? If you like to listen to us blather on about feelings and core wounds and shit like this, you like to think about stuff like that, right? And hopefully as we do the work, we get better and better at being in tune with our feelings, right? What is this that I'm feeling? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it I don't know, anxiety, whatever. But I think sometimes people and I always, like, when I say people, I mean me, we get stuck in this loop of feeling some feelings and thinking about our feelings, right? And intellectualizing our feelings and saying, I'm feeling anxious about this because of this core wound, because of my shame, because of this, and round I go, right? I feel a feeling, I figure out why I'm feeling the feeling, right? And then I feel maybe a different feeling, and then I think about that feeling, and I'm just thinking and feeling, living this whole deranged life inside of my head that no one can see, and I don't fucking do anything about it. And probably you, like me, like many people on here, we have like our thinking and our feeling buddies, right? Like our best friends. Like mine is my cousin. I can call her up and I can talk to her for 2 hours about all the things I'm thinking and feeling. And she is a thinker and a feeler too. And she'll like cheer me on, right? Yeah. She'll be like, here are the things that I'm thinking and feeling. And we'll be like, oh my God, what a great conversation. So good. Click. Do you think anybody does fucking anything about those thoughts and feelings? Not so very often. Yeah. So last year I went on this big thing, and all fall of 23, I was saying, like, I kept saying, like, I'm a doer. Like, I'm done thinking all the damn time. Like, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to do some shit. But I think we should talk about that, because I think people who like podcasts like this probably are good at the thinking and the feeling, but maybe not so good at the doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, because the feelings keep coming up, right? So every time I go to do, I'm thinking and feeling. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe I still need to work on this. And we're waiting for the perfect moment to do. Yes. And the perfect moment isn't there. Like, we know that. And we know that because we think and feel all the time. Like, we've already dug down into that. We're like, there is no such thing as perfection. There is no, like, we know those things. But then in our action, we show things differently, right? Yes. And I don't want to say that, like, if you're thinking and feeling all the time that there is no outward sign of action, because I do think that there is. I do think that you present yourself a different way in the world. You react in a different way in the world. Sure. You interact in a different way in the world. And all of those things are action that can help you, right? But then because you've done all this work, because you've up-leveled, then here's some new opportunities for you that you have access to because you've done that. And we're like, I don't know about that.
I don't know. There's like this quick, almost like paralyzation. And I don't ever want to be like, man, I should go back to doing what I was doing in my 20s, because that was crazy. But there was some impulsivity there, right? And not a lot of thinking and not a lot of insight into what was going on, right? But I was moving and shaking. I was moving without any clear direction, but things were happening, right? And it's like, how do you find that nice medium of, I am taking thoughtful action, right? I am considering the consequences. I am considering other people's fucking feelings, right? I am considering my own feeling, but I'm still making action. Whereas now I feel like I lean more towards, like, I am considering everything. I am considering every feeling I have from the moment I wake up to when I go to bed. I'm thinking about everyone else's feelings. I'm thinking, I just spend all of this time considering and not as much action. Right. Where it's like, where do we find that happy medium?
Yeah. It's the middle path.
It's the middle path. God damn, it's so hard.
It is. It is. And the middle path isn't as, I don't want to say it's not as fun, but it's kind of not. Because, like, when you're impulsive and you just do stuff, there's, like, a high from that, right? You just, like, do it.
Well, there's, like, drama, there's adrenaline, there's carnage, there's bridges burning, there's a lot happening.
And then, if I just sit and I think and feel, it's different. There's not as much, like, external stuff going on, but there is an internal high that happens. Yes. When you stay up in your head all the time. I love to stay in my head. I love to stay almost connected to, I call it being connected to the divine, and getting the downloads and sitting in meditation and really working through things that way. I love that. But then eventually I've got to come back down into my body and do something, right?
Do something with the information that you've been getting, learning, discovering, all of that.
And that's hard, because when it's just you, it's the same thing as, like, when it's just you and you're thinking through all of the terrible things, right? All the terrible things that go on in your mind and you hold in your head and you don't say out loud. It's the same thing when it's like all the good things in your mind and you don't put it out and be out loud about it,
It's just hard. It's hard. I don't know if people on here like the Enneagram, there's a lot of this in the Enneagram work too, and they talk about if you're an Enneagram 2, 3, or 4, you should center doing. Like, you should think more about doing, because those other things, like we talked about the the thinking and the feeling comes more naturally. And it is hard sometimes. I think for me, like what I try to do, like you said, I love to be in my house and have my soft blankets and make my tea and pull cards and journal and read and just shuffle around doing my own Jill things. But what I got good at last year, which I think maybe I need to start doing again this year, is I would do all of that stuff that I loved. And then I would end with InAction. And I did some more like manifesting then too. These are the things that I want, you know, trying to attract them, saying them out loud, writing them down. And I would say, these are the things I want. What is an action I can take today to get me there? Not, oh, let me write out a fucking to-do list. Let me write out a plan. Because that's all just still thinking.
Right.
That's all thinking.
Right.
But it's like, what am I going to do today?
Right.
That's going to get me one step closer to the things that I want. Now it's making me think about when we did our 60 strong. So this is like an easier example, right? It doesn't have to do with like, you know, like core wounds and shame and shit like that. But for 2 years, I've been like, I need to do work on my house. I want to get my house different. Like, like I have the money to do it. I have the ability to do it. I fucking look at Pinterest all day long. I'm on Wayfair. And do I do anything? No. But then we did the 60 strong, and I made myself say every single day, I'm going to do at least 10 minutes of something on my house that's not cleaning, right? I am going to hang something up. I am going to swap out a curtain. And I let myself do like calling a contractor or picking a paint color, all of those types of things. And literally in 60 days, I set the wheels in motion to do a major home renovation, and my house is fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
And I mean, let me not talk about the stress of when it was happening, but like it is perfect and exactly what I wanted. But had we never done that 60 strong,
Right.
I would have never, it would all look the same. And I'd be like, well, at one time I called a contractor and they didn't answer.
Must not be for me.
It's so hard right now. You know, there's a shortage. And it's just like, can we make that commitment to just doing something even every day for 5 minutes, right? Like, you know, thinking about you. Is this an opportunity I want? It sounds like you've thought about it a lot. You've done a lot of thinking and feeling about it. And what does it look like every day? Let me make a small movement, a small action towards that, right? And even like today, like you telling me about the opportunity, probably is a big action, right? Because otherwise you could have just like bottled it all up inside.
Yeah, I think I did that for the first time yesterday because I sat with it. I was like, let me just sit with this and decide what it is that I want, decide why. And I knew I wanted it. That was the thing. Like that, I knew I wanted it. I've known I've wanted it for 5 years, right? This has been a stated goal for quite a long time. And it was like, here's your opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not for me, right? So I had to sit with it for a minute and realize, no, this is exactly what I want. And yes, I'm good enough to have it. And I'm going to take some action on it and see what comes of it.
Because here's the thing about action too, is that even if the action doesn't get you where you were trying to go, it gets you somewhere.
Right.
And I believe that somewhere is meant where you were meant to be all along. But I think we forget that too, because I think there's this fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to do all this work and make all these moves and not end up where I wanted to be. But you're still going to end up somewhere other than where you were.
Right.
You know, it's like the hard conversation. I always say the worst part of a breakup, having had a million breakups, the worst part of the breakup is the week before the breakup. Or the week before the hard conversation, right? Because you're just stewing and stewing and stewing. And finally you've admitted, somebody has admitted that things are not going well.
Right.
And like it's all leading up to the conversation, right? And the conversation sucks. But the movement, the action, the doing of the conversation either ends the relationship and gets you somewhere else, either makes it so you have to have those hard conversations and you get to a better place in your relationship, right? And either way, you're somewhere different.
Right.
You're out of the fucking misery, right? And I think I forget that it's like, I don't want to do all this work and not even get it. Right. Well, I'm going to do all this work and I'm going to get something.
Right.
And that something is what I was meant to have anyways.
Yeah.
So why don't I just be fucking grateful for it and do something, as opposed to just, it's like when you're like a little kid. Were you one of those little kids that like would stand on the edge of the diving board and like just like puzzle and never go in? Of course you were. I already know the answer.
Yeah. My dad had a pool, and I was like the most timid, like was not going to jump off the side of the pool. I mean, we're talking floaties, goggles, nose plugs, all of the things.
And I was the kid that was like, we're in swimming class, and it's like, all right, we're jumping off the diving board. I know how to fucking swim. I swim all the time. I have jumped off the diving board before, and every time I would go to the edge of the diving board, and I just stand there and just like paralyzed. Yeah. And everybody's like, bitch, you've done this before. Like, you've done it. And I'm like, oh, but this time, you never know. And that's like, I think there's a certain personality type that is like that. I would be so curious to know how many people that listen to this podcast were the kids that stood at the end of the diving board. They needed everybody to be like, come on, get in there. You can do it. But it's like, you just gotta go. And you're eventually gonna go, right? Eventually, like, the fucking swim teacher is gonna come shove your ass in. Or your mom is gonna, like, shame you into that pool. Like, you're gonna go.
Right.
And it's like, why did you torture yourself?
Yeah.
The outcome was the same. Right. You're in the water.
Yeah.
You just had an extra 2 minutes of just misery. Of self-inflicted misery before you went in.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like I do sometimes. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. And like, how is it, I think about myself, how is it in 45 years of going through this same cycle and getting to the place where like the action happens and you're relieved, right? Every time that I still prolong the action as if somehow the action is going to make things worse.
I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, I get the feeling in my gut that's like, you got to do something. And I'm like, ooh, let me marinate on it. Let me go to my fucking enabler crew, right? Let me talk through it with each of them, right? And they're all like, oh, yeah, you probably got to do something. I'm like, ooh.
I would really just rather sit here in my own misery. This is where I'm comfortable.
I'm having a better time torturing myself than actually doing something. Why do we do that?
Well, we understand. This is on, a smaller scale, right? This like torturing of yourself. But we see this in larger scales with people too, where it's like the familiar is easier to stay in because the change is scary. Yeah. Even though I can tell you, I know that the change will bring something better, my body doesn't know it yet.
Right, because we've said this in podcasts too, every single time that a big change has come, that in the moment we hated it, right? Like something comes to an end, we didn't get something we wanted, something doesn't go the way that we thought it would. Every single time, it's like, that helped get me where I am today, and here is where I want to be.
Right, and I'm starting to learn now, take the opportunities. You can keep coming around to the same lesson until we have to like shove you off the diving board. Literally. Or are you going to just go ahead and do it this time and learn that you do have the agency and the courage and all of these things that you've had all along to just do it?
Yes, just jump in. Because to your point, and we've talked about this too, that if you don't follow and do what you know to be true in your gut, it eventually is going to have to happen. So how dramatic is it going to be? Right. Are you just going to jump off the diving board? Are you going to need like a couple people cheering you on? Right. Are you going to need everybody in the whole fucking pool staring at you like you're a fucking psycho until somebody comes and pushes you in? And there are so many times where it's like, I know I need to jump in. And I just don't. And I just don't. And it gets so dramatic and so much more painful. And I waste so much damn time because I was just unwilling to let go of this like fallacy, like this belief that maybe there is some way that I wouldn't have to jump in, right? There's like a helicopter will swoop down and scoop me up, right? Like,
and then set me very calmly into the pool, right? I still want to be in the pool, but if somebody could just come along and like
there must be some magical sneaky way that makes no logical sense at all that I could get in the pool. And it's like, how much time did I waste shivering at the end of that diving board?
And then recognizing that the magic is you actually doing it, opposed to waiting for the savior to come and move you to where you want to be.
Exactly.
Right? Because we think about that and we kind of give all our power away when we do that. When we just stand there in inaction, we're kind of giving our power away, because at some point we know that somehow this is going to have to happen.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't want to take control of this situation. I don't want to be the one who does it, right?
There's like some cowardice there almost. Like, I'm going to step aside and let someone or something else.
Yeah. And now in my life, I pull cards on a regular basis. I'm meditating. I'm doing all these things. And for weeks, I've been pulling the Fool, Go Ahead and Jump, the Ace of Wands, There Are Opportunities, and Death and Rebirth. Like, if that's not enough of a sign to be like,
I don't know if this is the right move.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no, I don't know. I don't know. Could anything be clearer? But, still I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
What if it all goes wrong? It doesn't even make sense, because it can't.
Right, exactly. Another good clue for me when I'm avoiding the inevitable, right, is like, I will stop doing things that will give me signs and clarity. I like do the equivalent of closing my eyes on the diving board. It is obvious that the world is falling apart, and I'm just too busy to journal or pull a card today. I'm too busy to meditate. I would call this person that knows me really well, but I just am not really ready for them to ask me like how I'm doing, right? And you engage in these avoidant behaviors, right? Where you kind of withdraw a little bit so you don't have to face the reality. And that is always a very good, it's a little pro tip. It's a little good indicator for me that's Rome is burning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the beautiful rainbow over here, you know? Like, I'm a little sweaty, it's a little hot, but like, I'm just gonna look over this way, no big deal. So I think that's another thing to be mindful of, because you said that with the cards, and I have a couple things that I'm avoiding in my life, and I haven't pulled cards in like 4 or 5 days. I know what they're gonna say, and I just, don't want to see that right now.
Yeah.
So we got to think about the avoidance piece too. So I feel like the moral of the story is that we need to embrace the Jill energy of 2023, and we need to be doers.
Yeah.
And we need to go out there and fuck some shit up in a good way.
In a good way.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm doing it in a positive way. Like, get in there. Get back in the arena. Any Brene Brown fans here know that Brene Brown always talks about being in the arena. She said that there's a lot of people in this world that like to sit in the cheap seats, right? They like to sit in the seats and say, oh my God, look at them down there doing it wrong, right? Look how crazy they're being. Look, oh, they fucked that up. Oh, they fucked that up. And we don't want to be those people. We want to be the people that even if we're messing up, even if we're a little, messy in our presentation, we are down in the arena actually trying to live this life, right? As opposed to sitting back and being like, ooh, it looks a little dirty down there. It looks a little weird. Don't want to get in the fray. So really, this is all about getting in the arena.
And it's funny that you said that way, because I have an oracle deck, and I pulled the same card for several days. And that is exactly what it says. I mean, I think it actually uses the word arena.
Like, get in the arena.
And it is not by Brene Brown.
And if you read any Brene Brown, she talks about that. Because I think, too, when we go back to, like, what is holding us back, right? Like the fear and the shame, what we talked about at the very beginning. I'm not going to get what I want. I'm not good enough to get what I want, right? Because there are people in our lives that sometimes tell us this, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
And those are the people in the cheap seats. Those are the people that are never brave and courageous with their own lives, that are so unwilling to mess up or look messy that they don't do anything. But they're the first ones to say, like, oh, look how messy that person looked.
Right.
Oh, look, she tried to fix that and she fucking failed. Or she spoke up and she looked stupid. Or, you know what I mean? But they're never doing those things.
Right.
And I think we have to remember, do we want to be the person sitting back and criticizing what everybody else is doing? Or do we want to be the person actually, like, participating in this life?
Right.
Getting in there and, like, trying to, like, build a life that we want.
Right.
To make the world a better place. To be kind to the people around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Be the person that's going to cheer other people on and yourself on instead of the criticizer.
Yeah, like go grab them by the arm and be like, let's try again.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, I think about that often. I've had lots of people in my life lots of overthinkers, right? And I look at how their lives have turned out, and I look at where they are right now. And when I feel that criticism or that judgment, I say, well, look at the source. Is that what you want? You want what they have? because their judgment has gotten them only this far.
Exactly. Right? No, I think that's something you have to think about. Do you want to be in the cheat seats or do you want to be in the arena? Mm-hmm. And although the arena is hard work and those cheap seats can be very snuggly and comfortable, I want to live the majority of my life in the arena.
Absolutely.
Whew. Do you want to pull a card for us?
Oh, yeah. We have to have a better setup for the cards because they're not over here anymore.
Amber is going to have to journey about 6 feet to go get the cards, so we'll give her a minute. I don't know. What do you think? I feel like maybe a tarot.
You want an animal one? That's what I did today.
Yeah, let's do an animal tarot. That's a thick deck.
I know. These are nice cards, too. They're kind of like tarot and oracle. Yeah, and if you like, like the daily tarot oracle type stuff, my Instagram, I do it every day. So you can always look on there. All right, let's take a deep breath. And set the intention that we will receive exactly what we need from this podcast and from this card pull. And hopefully we can start to see some places in our life where maybe we are creating our own misery, some obstacles that we are putting there, and how we plan to overcome those and really get in the arena and participate in the life that we want to have. All right, so we got the Page of Fire, which is also in the regular tarot like the Page of Wands, and it is the Monarch Butterfly, and it's and on the card it says creative opportunities that you feel passionate about are fluttering your way. Personal growth and broadened horizons will spark fresh and original ideas. So that's what we're going to use as the intro for this podcast because it does sum up everything that we have talked about in this podcast so far. So those opportunities are coming, and make sure that you are ready to receive.
That you go get them and don't let your fear hold you back.
Yep.
Don't overthink it. Just do it. All right, guys. Well, we'll catch you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.